What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla MonsterVerse lore Q&A. In this series, I take your guys' questions and comments about the lore and timeline of the MonsterVerse and answer them to the best of my ability. Today we are jumping on in and talking about how the MUTOs life cycle has always been broken, but maybe we have a way to fix it. Let's talk about it. Hey, if I timed this video right, and who knows, I have no clue if I did, I should be about to go on vacation right now, so I should be about to get on out of here, which means I won't be around for the next week or so for the Thanksgiving holiday to cover any big news that drops. So if any news drops while I'm gone, I'm sorry, I'll do my best to cover it when I get back. I'm not gonna be gone that long. This isn't like a secret, exciting vacation for the channel or anything. This is more like a family reunion, so no channel related content or anything like that, but I hope you guys all have a fantastic holiday. There should still be uploads when I'm gone, but I guess we'll see. Anyways, make sure to leave your questions and comments about the MonsterVerse lore down below so that I can answer them in future Godzilla MonsterVerse lore Q&A videos. And today we are continuing, man, Dagon and Adam winds up being the topic that is so plentiful. People have so many questions about those guys, and so today we're going to be talking about the way that sucker died and what that means about the MUTOs life cycle, because the MUTOs life cycle is very confusing. Today's question comes from Doosan YL8GK, who says, speaking of Dagon, if he died to the Prime, how did Adam die? I'm mainly asking because in Aftershock, Prime laid eggs inside Dagon, but Adam also had the MUTOs inside him. Also, question about the canonicity of MUTO Prime. Well, first of all, just to make this clear, Dagon and Adam are the same creature. Adam is the bones discovered in Godzilla 2014. That's what Monarch designates the bones. They're the bones in the Philippines that they scan and find out are actually a Godzilla species, which, by the way, I recently covered this in a news and updates. I thought this was really cool, but the actual bones of Adam wind up lining up very, very nicely with the concept art of Godzilla from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, despite having that bear-like skull, which doesn't 100% resemble the MonsterVerse Godzilla skull, which many of us, including myself, just theorize means that this is probably an offshoot or a subspecies of Godzilla, or rather Godzilla is some sort of special offshoot of his own species. But either way, I just thought I'd throw that out there. So Adam died, and then just shortly after the events of Godzilla 2014, Monarch uncovered the lore, the history, and the legends about Dagon. Dagon is what the Phoenicians called him, and it was a Godzilla member that lived in Japan and was eventually killed by Jinshin Mushi, the MUTO Prime. So it's the same creature, same death, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the lore has to be 100% the same. If you're aware on this channel, I do make a distinction between film canon and comic canon, so let me break down the differences between those two things and also explain why why we kind of need the comics in this case, because the MUTOs make very little sense regardless. MUTO Prime also doesn't make a ton of sense, but I'll explain it as we go through here. The MUTOs life cycle has always been one of the more debated and questionable things about Godzilla 2014. As in Godzilla 2014, we start out with the bones in the Philippines that have two dormant spores inside. One winds up being a male MUTO, the other winds up being the female MUTO. The male MUTO's spore for some reason hatches upon catalyzation with outside air, and then the male MUTO escapes, goes to Janjira, soaks up the radiation. Meanwhile, the female MUTO spores moved to Nevada. They both develop and grow up together, eventually emerging in 2014, where the events of Godzilla 2014 happen. Things get really confusing partway through that final act, as the female MUTO lays a nest of eggs, and she lays hundreds of eggs surrounding this nuclear bomb. This nest looks absolutely nothing like the two spores seen inside Adam's bones, or Dagon's bones. It's always been very confusing. Why does the MUTO's life cycle have such different ways of reproduction, both seen within the same exact movie? If I'm gonna give an outside of film explanation here, my honest to God thought is it's just straight up a continuity error, like some sort of mistake or oversight, as they needed a motivation for the MUTOs and Godzilla to be in conflict, and so they came up with their parasitic explanation. They also needed a reason for the MUTOs to be tracking around the globe and going to the places they go and doing the things they do, and so they came up with a nuclear explanation. And the nest at the ending is supposed to look visually awesome and terrifying, and supposed to give forward motivation to blow it up, showing the threat of the MUTOs, but it also never really lined up with the beginning of the movie. And I honestly think that's just because the MUTOs changed so much over over the course of production, as they basically started out entirely different than they wound up, and it was through shaping it with Max Bornstein and Gareth Edwards that they landed on the MUTOs they did. So that's what I think is the outside of film explanation, but that doesn't mean there isn't an in-universe explanation for what's going on. There actually could be. In Godzilla: The Art of Destruction, we learn a little bit about Gareth Edwards and Max Bornstein's thoughts behind the MUTOs' life cycle. The MUTOs can call upon each other when it comes time to mate, triggering a response from a Godzilla. They actually wind up luring Godzillas to them. That's something that their species can do, which is how they draw Godzilla into conflict in the film. So when Godzilla's listening to the MUTOs speaking to each other, telling each other that they've reached maturity, they're also in a way beckoning him to the surface so that they can presumably try and kill him and lay eggs inside of him, only to discover, hey, we live in a whole new world now, we don't need to kill a Godzilla, there's plenty of radiation sources all over the place like nuclear bombs. So they switch their methods and go after the nukes instead of Godzilla. Here it's explained that the MUTOs often would kill Godzillas in packs and then mate inside the radioactive carcass, leaving behind two spores that feast upon that Godzilla's radioactive core until it dies, and until those creatures reach maturity and hatch. As all MonsterVerse titans have since become radioactive with Godzilla King of the Monsters, it's possible that any titan carcass in the MonsterVerse could work for the MUTOs, but I actually don't think that's particularly true. The Godzilla species seems to harbor a special type of radiation, and they also feast upon a different type of radiation than the Hollow Earth radiation that the rest of the titans seem to feed on. It's this type of radiation that's the primary source for MUTO mating, the type of ionizing radiation that you can find inside of a nuclear reactor and inside of a nuclear bomb. While that is one method of reproduction for the MUTOs, the film also presents us with another. The MUTOs can simply find a nuclear core, and a pregnant female can lay up to hundreds of eggs in a single nest. These eggs would then hatch into larvae that need to... we don't know. All we know is that the spores, when the male spore hatches, is in a hatchling state that still needs to create some sort of chrysalis or cocoon to reach its final stage. The female presumably does this in the Yucca Mountain in Nevada, but we don't actually see that on screen. It's possible that the same thing would happen with the hatchlings from the MUTO nest. The larva might need to then go out and find deeper radiation pockets and feast upon them, growing into their final forms. It's also possible that, kind of like the sea turtles trying to get back to the ocean, many of the baby MUTO would not survive this process, so that's one of the things that keeps overpopulation in check. There's also another explanation in that the comics offer us, which is that maybe the MUTO kill and eat each other to get some source of radiation and nutrients as well, so that's another thing that would keep that population in check, so not hundreds of thousands of MUTO are born at a time. But that leaves some questions. Were the spores inside of Godzilla the result of a nest hatching and just two of the MUTOs surviving that? Or specifically were two eggs laid inside Dagon only? That's what the comics will tell us. Ultimately, we have no idea how many forms the MUTOs take, but we know of at least two forms. A hatchling will come out of the spore or nest, and then at some point it'll reach its final form of maturity. We also know, based on what comes next, that there could be a queen MUTO, which is a more mature version of a female MUTO, and a Jinshin Mushi, the MUTO Prime. The fact that we have two different reproduction methods for the MUTOs actually plays upon the idea of alternation of generations, something that I discovered because I was so curious why they kept using the term spore to describe the MUTOs, which I think plays into the fact that they're parasites, as some parasitic fungus reproduce through spores. So I think they're playing into the whole parasitic angle by referring to the things inside of Godzilla as spores rather than as eggs. And through the alternation of generations, this is a life cycle that some plants and fungus have, where the reproductive method for an organism change depending on what generation you're looking at. One generation reproduces sexually between two parties, while the next generation reproduces through spores asexually by latching onto a different organism to grow off of. Maybe this is why Dr. Graham and Dr. Serizawa refer to the MUTO's cocoons inside the Godzilla bones as dormant spores, as this would be part of the back end of the asexual reproductive cycle. Hey, D-Force, I'm gonna level with you guys. I have so much less time to get this video finished than I was hoping for. I really do have to get going like immediately. So that's where I'll end today's discussion. I will pick this back up once I'm back. But to summarize here, Godzilla 2014 presents us with two different MUTO life cycles. Like, let's ignore all subsequent media, all outside canon, everything like that. Just Godzilla 2014 already presents us with two different life cycles that go unexplained, implying something much deeper about the MUTOs that forces us to be a lot more inquisitive and speculative than we're used to. So I think the best explanation we can come up with for what's literally happening in Godzilla Godzilla 2014 is the alternation of generations theory, which traditionally applies to fungus, but in this case the MUTO are very different in terms of their biology, part insect, part mammal, part parasite. In this case, we just have to come to the conclusion that at some point an alternation of generations happens for some reason within the MUTOs that results in some MUTO becoming asexual reproducers, which would result in the types of spores we see in Adam. Meanwhile, the traditional MUTO mating process results in a big nest of eggs like we see at the end of Godzilla 2014. In the next video, I'll go in depth with what Godzilla Aftershock has to say about this, how that really does help to support this film's canon, as well as our current theory about the alternation of generations, going more in depth with the actual background of what's really going on with MUTO Prime. So look forward to that one in the next one. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can using the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. And remember, I will be gone for the next few days, so I'll probably not be very active online, although I will still try and get some content out there while I'm gone. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.